Hello everyone, and thank you for spending this very special time listening to our recitation of names, concluding PRO's annual Week of Remembrance. We do this to honor those who have gone before us, to celebrate and carry on their legacies, and to call attention to the great losses our community has already endured. Over the next several minutes, we will read out each of nearly 700 names currently listed on our memorial wall. I will start with the two names whose legacies created Parkinson's Resource Organization. Do you have someone who we should include on the memorial wall? Call us at 877-775-4111. And if today's act of remembrance touches you, please make a donation to support PRO's free emotional support and practical resource programs for people with Parkinson's and their caregivers. You can donate via the link that accompanies this video on our website, also at www.parkinsonsresource.org, or give us a call at 877-775-4111. My late husband, Alan Rosen. My late mother, Amelia Lank-Simona. Joyce Vida Abel. Sadat A. Acton. Sharon Riff Ackerman. Mark Anthony Adams. Alan Ross Adishek. Nelson W. Aldrich, Jr. Muhammad Ali. Tom Allen. Irwin Allen. Ruth Alper. Leonard Altman. Irma Altschul. Jean Arnold. Crisalita Cano Arriaga de Hernandez. John Charles Attia. Lydia Oslander. Joanne Sprague Balcom. Roger Bannister. William P. Bill Barnard. Susan Barrett. Marcia Baslow. Charles E. Boblett, Jr. Alan Boger. Elaine Baxter. Robert R. Bean. Edward P. Beard. Joseph James Beck. Mark Beck. Aaron T. Beck. Eugene Becker. Nicholas Belfrog. Richard I. Bellman. Lawrence F. Bender. Mel Benjamin. Douglas Bennett. Carol Ann Bennett. Adalbert Bernardi. Gerald Jerry Bernstein. Morris M. Berzon. Stuart Grazier Bigler. Myrna A. Binderman. Andy Beta. Jordan Bloomfield. Marilyn Vizel Blue. Sandra H. Blum. Edmund H. Blum. Ricardo Bloom. Donald H. Bodell. Peter Bogdanovich. Oriel Bahigas. Larry Bowles. Harry Bondareff. Wayne Everett Borlaug. Charles Bridal. John Jack Breham. Walker Lee Breland. Natalie Bruneau. Daniel Joseph Lewis Brondy, Arlene Brucker, Richard Vander Brugge, David Brunn, Thomas E. Burrier, Emily Venice Brzezinski, Constance Buchanan, Jeremy Bullock, Tommy Burnett, Alan P. Burns, Danton Burrows, John Paul Brillier, Frank V. Bicus, Joseph Buzetta, Charles R. Cabrera, Raymond R. Caffarelli, Jerome Kagan, William Cahoon, Joseph Campanella, Emilio Campos Jr., Robert Sheldon Cantor, Penny Carducci, Johnny Coretto, Stephen Carlton, Catherine Lucille Carter, Richard Cartridge, Daniel C. Cathcart, Donald C. Kavanaugh, Marcel Roland Charbonneau, John Cherry, Nicholas Sorello, U.S. Attorney General Benjamin Civiletti, Michael Clancy, Mary Carol Louise Lechner Clark, Harvey Eugene Clay, Jane Cleaver, Michael Richard Clifton, Charles Otis Klein Sr., Murray Cohen, Bernard S. Cohen, Alan F. Cohen, Shelby Collinsworth, Elaine Hackle Comis, Jeff Cook, Helene Coor, Ives Copens, John Strop Cornell, Dr. Lucienne J. Coate, Marjorie F. Cohen, Josephine Jo Crack, Eugene Creech, Harold L. Bing Crosby, Robert Cumming, Sir Ian Holm Cuthbert, Joseph Cutelli, William Daly, Judith A. Danka, Terry Daniels, Kalani David, John L. Davis, Dennis Medinas del Castillo, Mary T. Delgado, Lawrence Bill Dennis, Charles Edward Dent, Ann Knight Sutherland DeRosa, Patrick DeRowan, Kamal Dervis, Joan Didion, Carl Dietrich, Don Dietrich, Ray Diller, Robert Downey Sr., Franklin Griffith Drake, Saul Sidney Dresner, Mildred Dresner, Robert DeBow, Tommy Dubuque, Lionel Duffin, David Dunay, Alan G. Dustin, Timothy Paul Easterly, Fred Edwards, Marilyn Egerstrom, Abdurkarim El Kabli, Charles Chuck Elkind, Leslie Elliott, George Ellison, Susan Mary Berry Emlett, Joyce Espenson, Lane Evans, Ronald Wayne Fahey, Johnny Famechon, Francis Tarleton Sissy Fahrenthald, Richard T. Farmer,
Frederico Torres Fernandez, John Emery Furby, Ralph Fertig, Elton Fessier, Judith Finwall, J. Fiondella, Louise A. Fisher, Stephen L. Fishman, Harry William Fleming, G. Louise Fletcher, Alex Flynn, John Forbes, Grace Fowler, Lawrence Raphael Friedman, Larry Friedman, Thomas Patrick Frensley, Tommy Frensley, John R. Freunds, David John Gabay, Ricky Gardner, David Earl Goretz, Jane Dara Gates, Erwin Gershaw, Michael Gerson, Robert Gibson, Bob Gibson, Warren C. Gilmore, Ricardo Giovanelli, Gladys D. Bellier Glates, Jean Marie Rogel Glazer, Ken Glenn, Miriam K. Glickman, Jerome Abraham Glicksman, Joseph Goodard Jr., Stephanie R. Getz, Herb Getz, Jason Goldenberg, Freddie Gonzalez, Elva C. Gonzalez, Richard H. Gooden, Sophie Goodsell, Howard Goodwin, Nancy Gore, Heather Goss, Reverend Robert Grates, Edward John Graftus, Patricia Graham, Billy Graham, Gordon Graham, J. Joseph Grand Mason, William W. Gray, Irving Green, Forrest Gregg, the Great One, Walter Gretzky, Albert Griffiths, William E. Grosser, Stephen Grossman, Dr. Robert Grossman, Dr. Carol Grote Jr., Dr. Carl Grote Jr., Dave Hadfield, Dennis Matthew Haggerty, Andre Haubfinger, Mike Hales, Dick Hale, James Hampton, David L. Hand, John and Lynn Hansen, Susan Haran, Veronica Ronnie Harris, Steve Harris, Robert James Hart, Donald Leo Hartenfeld, Robert Neil Harvey, Robert Hadoff, Joel Havman, John Havlicek, Luther Hayes, Janice Yvonne Hayhurst, Don B. Heath, Dave Hebner, Richard James Heckman, Dick Heckman, Captain Stevis Hectus, Mike Henry, Peter V. Harold, Richard Nelson Hester, Joseph William Hayer, Michael Edward Hickey, Dwayne Hickman, Jack M. Hirschberg, Jack Martin Hiss, Jr., Anya Hoffman, Robert Warren Hoffman, Bob Hoffman, Sandra Wiener Hoffman, Elna Hoffman, Albert Lee Hoover, Sue Boiling Worsham Horg, Mac Horton, John Horan, Bob Hoskins, David Howard, Robert Staples Howard, Dr. Joseph C. Howarth, Harold Huberman, Gordon Hunt, Lee Iacocca, Johnny Isaacson, Sandra Israel, Tora Laura, Michael Robin Jackson, Sandy Jacobs, Esther J. Cox, Jay Jaffe, Joel Dwight Jansen, Francis Frank Jaskulski, Margaret Jerem, Pete St. John, Robert A. Johnson, Bart Johnson, Ron Johnson, Nicholas Philip Jones, Emery Elmer Jones Jr., Larry Josephson, Ralph Rodley Jr., Herv Champagne Jr., Harry Kalugian, Carl Nicholas Karcher, Muhammad Ali Karim Kahani, Kamal Ahmed Kasim, Casey Kasem, Marilyn Kettleman, Marty Louise Karcher, Marty Karcher, Erwin Kellner, Bill Kelly, Maureen Elizabeth Halfstein, Raymond Kennedy, Arnie Kent, John P. Kerrigan, John J. Kerrigan, Frank Anthony Kerrigan Jr., John F. Kerrigan, Ph.D., Clyde R. King, Darlene Krishner, Bjorn Kellstrom, Morris H. Klein, Walter R. Klostermeyer, Orion Knox, William H. Bill Coben, Charles Cope, Richard Kahn, Terry Robert Kohler, James P. Copley, Frank Kowalski, William B. Kramer, Richard Bernard Kransdorf.
Paul L. Krentzman, Donald Kroll, John William Cruz, Hans Kang, Peter Kugel, Michael G. Kushnick, Stefan Mutasa Kiefu Lumya, Crichton Lacey Baker, Art LaFleur, Robert D. Lally, John Landy, James Lannert, Alexia Aneke Lanning, Lois Ann Lapper, Aaron Latham, Daniel Locke, Gloria M. Lefkowitz, Beverly Wren Limbers, John Leo, Susan Leonard, Tom Lester, Gerald S. Levy, Leo Levine, Les Levine, Joseph H. Lewis, G. Gordon Liddy, Richard A. Ladinsky, Jr., Dr. David Patrick Liebel, Dr. Myron Lind, Monica Linnea Mogi Lindquist, Carol Lyle, Fred Long, E. Howard Long, Trinidad Trini Lopez III, Stanislaus Lordaswamy, Barbara Joan Love, Jan Lovell, Eugene E. Loya, Elliot Lubin, Tom Luddy, Lord Baron Leighton Cobold, Marcus Richard Dick Maybe, Carl Henry Macklin II, Cargill McMillan Jr., Horace McVaugh, Gordon Elmer Madru, George Madsen, Mike Mahoney, Mary L. Maldonado, Barbara Sue Kaplan Mullett, Carrie George Manolis, Herschel G. Mansier, Elizabeth Sue Marchand, Barry M. Marder, Mike Marley, John Lewis Marmon IV, Ingram Marshall, Reverend Ann B. Martin, Victor Katsuo Masaki, Joseph Joe Mason, Bertram K. Massing, Joseph Monis Mateo Jr., Jason Matthews, John Anthony Maurer Jr., Gerald Jerry Mayerson, Robert G. McAllister, Carol Ann McCain, Fred McCown, Bruce Jeffrey McDermott, James A. McGarity, Daniel James McGuire, Patricia Pat McIntosh, Buddy Travis McPhail, Bill Maestro, Joe Mendelson, David Maurice Mercier, Mary May Mayer, Jody Miller, John Michael Miller, John Ordner Miller, Robert Bob Minahan, David Moberg, Jim Moeller, Dr. Amir H. Mohajiran, Rosita Fern Montgomery, Nikki Moore, William K. Bill Moore II, Mark Paul Moorman, Marty Morgenstern, Murray Allen Morgulin, Joan Nelson Morris, Leo Morissette, Irene Renee J. Mata, Pote Muignon, Patrick Joseph Murphy, Mary Nafziger, Luis Ricardo Nakauchi, Bryce Nelson, Herbert M. Newman, Gordon C. Nichols, Sr., Kathleen Niezorowski, Robert Noonan, Gary O'Connell, Tom O'Connor, Dr. Dennis O'Leary, Randolph O'Neill, Maureen O'Sullivan, Robert Ocon, Wah Yu Ong, Pete Orput, Kay Toinette K.T. Oslin, Elena Vesara Ostern, Ronald J. Ostro, Kenneth J. Ott, Sally Waterstrad Otten, Leonard Overcash, Philip Walter Owen, Howard P. Apple, Rain Park, Harry Benjamin Parkhurst, Larry Parrish, Marcella A. Polinsky, Virginia Payson, Jerry Pettit, Lois Ann Pierce, Jim Pike, Richard Pleasance, Arthur Poppy Pomper, Colin Powell, Margaret Joyce Powell, Leah Michaels Pozo, Salvatore Sam Prestiani, Vincent Leonard Price, Jr., Diane Prigorak, Diane De Palma, Dong Puno, David Spencer Quall, Mary Lee Queen, Donald Racken, Alexander Alex Redos, James M. Jim Ramstad, Quentin Edgar Vivian Rance, Frankie Randall, Bill Rankin, Frank Neil Rao, Lee Redis, William Rayberg, Jack Reich, Linda J. Reedsma, Louis A. Riesman.
Dr. P. Rema, Catherine L. Joyce Remery, Janet Reno, John Walter Wrench, Jordan Richmond, George Rideout, Judy Powers Reamer, Richard C. Riggs, Kenneth Robert Riley, Carmelo Mickey Rendon, Chris Roberts, Frank Bud Rogers, Charles Chuck Rogers, Marlon Keith Rolena, Salvatore Sal Ronci, Virginia Virgie Ronquillo, Rona Cater Rosenbaum, Erwin B. Rosenstein, Edmund Ray Ross, Lucy Rusis, Joanne Palmer Rosa, Leonard Hirsch Rudolph, Ronald Ruskin, Jack Hale Seifkow, Lyndall Austin Samples, Manuel Santana, Rosalie Sass, Tom Sawyer, Lyle Edwin Schaffer, Fred Schenerer, Anna L. Schifano, Percy Schmeiser, Justin Schmidt, Samuel Rosenberg Schneiderman, Bella Lipson Schreider, Ronald William Schroeder, Jeffrey Scott, Walter Scott, Alistair Scrivener, Bill Seal, Tom Seaver, Samuel Big Mike Selfman, Surajit Sengupta, Joseph Matthew Serpa, Joseph Sessa, Jack Freed Sexton, Rick Schaefer, David P. Shannon, Robert Louis Shapiro, Carl P. Sharp, James Harold Sheehy, Jean Sheffrin, Barbara May Shelby, Brian Sherman, Michael J. Shine, Mitzi Shore, Philip D. Short, Richard Allen Shubin, Lieutenant Colonel George H. Skip Shutt Jr., Bob Skelly, Jerry Sloan, Willu Smith, Arthur Nettie Smith, Robert Louis Smith, Donald James Smith, Walter Edward Smith, Christian So, Jean Reynolds Sonico, Paul Francis Spas, Jonathan Spence, Tom Spires, David Jeffrey Steenbergen, Dr. Richard B. Stein, Uli Stein, Charles D. Stein, Norman F. Steinberg, Herman William Bill Steinberg Jr., Venetia Stevensons, Adlai Ewing Stevenson III, Carol Stitt, David Eugene Stone, John F. Stone, John Paul Stone Herner, Mary C. Talmadge, Patrick Tambay, Dr. S. Jerome Tamkin, Otis Taylor, LaDonna Taylor, Dr. David Taman, George Charos, Scott Richard Temple, Mukhtar Thakur, Jeremy P. Tharcher, Myron Thielman, Millard Tip, Donald G. Tober, Robert I. Toll, Diane Cottrell Tompkins, Pat Torpy, David T. Tritel, H. Stephen Trevor, Estelita Fuentes Trianes, John Trojanowski, Edewale Troutman, Glenn Trulock, Henry Sang, Richard Tusherer, Samuel Urkis, George Vafiatis, Merritt Eugene Van Sant, Raphael Ray Vega, David Norwood Verdery, Robert Wallace Vineyard, Anthony Michael Tony Vitti, Christopher Waddell, Adam Wade, Carol Ann Wagner, Charlotte Maria Offlow Johnson Wall, Robert Alexander Waller, Dale Walsh, James Walsh, Larry Warder, Ann C. Wasserman, Bruce Alexander Watt, Jeffrey G. Webb, Edward Weidenfeld, Julian Samuel Harold Wiener, Stuart Weitzman, Francis Wendell, Martin Wenger, Arnie R. Westland, Mary Whalen, Jerry Wheeler, Michael Wishaw, Fred White, Jack B. White, Maurice White, H. Ken Whitehouse, Donna Axum Whitworth, Ardith Wygant, James Wilding, Harry Wayne Williams, Robin Williams, Jennifer Fitzgerald Wilson, David Wilson, John Woodcock Jr., Sandra Woods, Stephen Claire Yohn, Douglas A. York, Thomas Finton Young, Sherry Renfro Usum, Royce J. Eust, Steve Zachary, Ronald A. Zaki, Alexander Zale, Robin Zerider, Ruth Zerider, Alan Louise Zaslov, Virginia Faye Zeidman, Frances Louise Franny Zostant. Thank you for joining us today for this act of witness. If you have a loved one you think should be included in the memorial wall, please give us a call at 877-775-4111. Or if you'd like to make a donation to support our memorial wall and other resources, visit our website, www.parkinsonsresource.org, or click the link that accompanies this video. Please stay well, and remember, we are always here to help you navigate living with Parkinson's. Thank you.